Hello there, it's Silver. This is the 100 Line Last Defense Academy. This is a hybrid SRPG and visual novel, as well as a high school trauma with industrialized misery simulator. This is the next game from the creators of Danganronpa and AI the Somnium Files. So we're talking about like visual novel royalty here, basically. It's got a lot to talk about, having a lot more gameplay to it than most VNs, so let's get into it. The idea here is that you play as both a singular main character and a body of students who found themselves at the mysterious Last Defense Academy. Plucked from their lives in an enclosed complex with an artificial sky, they have to survive 100 days in this strange place while an onslaught of enemies tries to get inside. The whole time, you're also trying to get more info as to what's going on and trying to solve the mysteries around you. So, audio-visual-wise, the game looks great with a solid anime aesthetic and extremely vibrant colors and shading. Character art is pretty important considering it's what you're going to be looking at for most of the game. Characters have an appealing and highly stylized look. If you've played a Danganronpa game, then you'll be familiar with the specific kind of art that's being used. Characters tend to have crazy looking eyes and signature hairstyles that make them stand out immediately. Each character also has a surprising number of portraits / stances they can use depending on the situation, so they feel pretty dynamic in how they're presented. Environment art is also really nice with tons of visual detail in all the backgrounds. The fact that you're in a school is a familiar setting, but this one's a little different, and the backgrounds show that right off the bat. Each room, and even the outdoor segments, all have plenty of clutter and little gadgets doing their things. You'll notice that there's a focus on movement in the different scenes. Most backgrounds have moving elements that add bits of kinetic detail to each area, from the various food machines in the cafeteria to the screens and windows in the classrooms. Many areas have a centerpiece element that moves to catch your eye. I'd say the strange and unknown nature of the school is well realized by the weird machines and purple flames surrounding it. They have clearly put a lot of effort into making it feel like a place people could really live temporarily. The enemies are something different entirely, though. Where most other elements are stylized but mostly realistic looking, the various creatures you'll be facing look completely different. They're ultra colorful and quite cute. Many of them look like toys or plushies come to life. This ultra-cutesy appearance contrasts well with the fact that they're extremely violent and kill people in visceral and bloody ways. The juxtaposition of looking like toys, yet being very scary and dangerous, is another thing that adds to the uncanny and bizarre nature of the place you found yourselves in. Then there are the commanders. These make up the boss fights of the game, and unlike the rest of the enemies, are very much not cute. They look like bizarre alien monsters with strange powers, and seeing them lead a cavalcade of living plushies is strange. The game also has some striking aesthetics for certain situations. Like when you defeat a commander, for instance, you have to choose which student is going to deliver the killing blow. The screen for this is blood red and highlights an almost slasher smile appearance on each character. And it really doesn't make you feel like the good guys. There's also a good amount of cool effects and transitions that are used throughout normal gameplay. The way that background effects are visible behind your character or on-screen effects for switching around the room all add this extra layer of slick presentation that shows the developers are very experienced when it comes to how to make a VN look good. Even details like the pop-ups for things like the bells before morning and evening announcements are delivered in this confident way that's just stylish to look at, and it all makes the simple act of playing and going through the rest of the text feel slick and custom-built for maximum gameplay smoothness. Gameplay-wise, the whole game is split down the middle between the VN segments and the SRPG segments. So during most of the gameplay, you're watching various events around the school and triggering other optional events based on who you want to hang out with. The story is delivered at a solid pace with plenty of scenes talking to the characters and trying to figure out the various mysteries of this place together. In fact, I'd say that's really the overarching feeling of the game, mystery solving. You're given an expanding list of things you don't understand about your current situation and set about seeing if anyone holds the keys. There's a large number of story segments that develop the situation and each character, so you'll never have days go by where there's lots of wasted time. I was surprised by just how much character development there is for each person, given the number of them you're managing eventually. Generally, the story is divided into sort of mini arcs, where a certain character or two gets several days' worth of development, and the group's understanding of things will also advance by a notch at the end. Sometimes you may spend a whole week slowly getting to know someone and their motivations, and other times you may get a section where it's mostly about the primary story getting payoffs and advancing for everyone. There'll also be sections that are multi-day long build-ups to some larger operations, often involving taking a team of specific characters to strike out into the greater world and solve a situation. These bits often herald some significant change in the story and are always something to look out for if you see the story as something that's broken into arcs. In between the more significant story bits, you'll also have some days as free days to do whatever you like. Free time is divided into 2 segments, one in the morning and another in the afternoon, although a few free days will start later in the day and only give you 1 slot. You have quite a few options, things you can do on free days, most of which involve making your team stronger in some way for combat. You could simply talk to any character with a green symbol next to their portrait and choose to spend a time slot with them. Doing this will give you some extra development for them and also raise your main character's stats. As the stats go up, grades like science or gym will raise, and you'll need higher grades to upgrade your characters to higher levels. You can also use your free time to spend resources to create and upgrade stuff like potions and defensive items for battle, as well as the various skills for each character and even unlock new ones. You can go into a VR training sim to fight unique battles for battle point rewards, which you'll also need to improve people's skills. You can also choose to go outside and explore the surrounding ruins. This works almost like a board game, with lots of random events and battles, but plenty of items together, which turn into resources for upgrades when you come back. There's quite a large world to explore, consisting of several screens that'll become unlocked when you get better fire extinguishers during the story. You can only choose to explore during the morning slot though, and it'll use both slots of the day. You can also choose to use the Gift-O-Matic to make gifts to give to people. This also takes resources, and some gifts also take key items that you have to get from exploration missions. Figuring out which keywords and gifts the characters love will give you extra scenes with them and also raise your stats twice as much as simply hanging out with them does. You can even choose to read books in the library, for instance, to get some good stat increases, as well as some extra background lore for the world. The other half of the game is, of course, the combat. It's pretty involved and has a full-on strategy RPG sort of layer with plenty of moving parts. During battle, the school will be surrounded by a shield, which can be attacked, and you'll lose on the spot if it falls. This means that the game is technically a defense game. You have many characters to control, and an amount of AP to spend, usually 6, on everyone. This means that there are often turns where you don't give orders to every character, simply because you lack the AP to move them all. However, the larger enemies will refund an AP when killed. You have to take advantage of this as much as possible to have efficient turns due to how outnumbered you'll always be. Each character starts with 1 skill as well as some defensive options, and it's up to you how to use everybody to their most specialized effectiveness. Each skill has a damage value and an amount of movement that can be taken before casting it, meaning your mobility is actually determined by which attacks you're using. Move them as you see fit, and target the squares with the best outcome and let it off. Damage values are not random, and each enemy type always has a specific amount of health. The fact that everything is a known quantity makes the combat feel very chess-like, and it means that tactics are key. As you upgrade each character, you'll also unlock more skills for them to use, which will develop their niche in combat, as well as giving you more options to deal with unexpected situations. Using any skills will build up a resource called voltage. You can store up to 300% voltage, but you use it in 100% chunks. You can use it to empower a character in various ways for the rest of the combat, but you can also use it on special attacks. Everybody has a unique special attack with a flashy animation that's super powerful, but it comes at the cost of stunning that character for the rest of the turn and the whole turn after. Learning how to manage both AP and voltage are the main mechanics to beating the combat sections. Now, it's usually the case in SRPGs that letting a character die is a very bad idea, but in this game, you're actually encouraged to do it. For one, when you get graded after the end of a combat, you actually get bonus points for each time a character died. But also, someone going down immediately gives you 100% voltage. When someone is at critical health, they also gain the ability to use a desperation special attack. This will be the same as their normal special, but it costs no voltage and automatically kills them right after you use it. I think you're meant to see your characters as a resource to know when to use effectively. Battles are split into waves. with all dead allies reviving at the beginning of each new wave, so it can really benefit you to get them killed sometimes. There's a nice variety of combat missions as well. Sometimes you'll be fighting around the school with a small number of characters split between several battlefields at once that you have to defend. Other times there'll be hazards and environmental effects to deal with, and of course there's also the commanders, which make any mission much more complicated as soon as they show up. Sometimes though you'll be fighting elsewhere further afield and the rules could be different, something like kill all enemies in one turn to prevent them from spotting you and raising an alarm. These non-school fights are often even more chess-like than the standard battles. Some battles will also give you a much smaller team than your usual ones, making it important to know how to use each person at their most effective. There's also a surprisingly large amount of combat in this game in general, so if you're more into VNs for pure narrative, you might find this more demanding, but I think it strikes a good balance between story beats and gameplay, and I think it'll please a lot of people into VNs and tactics RPGs with its pacing. It's rare to see a game go for two niche genres at once, but you'll find that there's much to learn and lots to do spread out over your 100 days at the Academy. I'm not going to go into any spoilers or major character moments, but I do want to at least say something about the story as a whole, given that this is a visual novel and thus heavily reliant on getting invested in its story and characters. I think the game sets up a lot of mystery right from the start and has the player asking loads of questions, many of which won't get answers for a dozen or 2 more hours. The game clearly takes a lot from series like Danganronpa and introduces a world full of unknowns while slowly trickling context and answers to the player over many events. I had a great time being confused and trying to piece things together through disparate character speeches and context clues. It was a fun, multi-layered mystery that evolves over time as the stakes raise and pieces get revealed. The game does a great job of stringing you on for quite some time. The early days won't reveal much to you, but will have you asking yet more questions. By the time you're halfway through your sentence, you'll have more answers and a better grasp of the overall situation, but there will still be plenty left to learn. It's good at making you want to seek out more character development and events just to see them, which helps you stay invested in the students. Once you reach the point where big answers start dropping and major reveals start coming in, it continues to evolve the stakes and keep the final answers just out of your reach until the very end. It's a game that's all about the mystery of the world you find yourself in, creating an organic reason to want to continue and see it through. I had a great time with this game overall, and I don't have any difficulties in recommending it. If you like VNs, there's a mysterious and interesting one here for you to solve. If you like SRPGs, there's enough mechanics and tactical battles to keep you interested. If you aren't a fan of loads of dialogue in your games, then this is probably not for you, but I think that would probably be obvious by nature of the people who are responsible for it. I was surprised by how much development each character gets despite there being lots of them, and how much narrative, context, and events you can fit into a 100-day stretch. I'd say the game's high review scores make perfect sense, as it sets out to do an interesting fusion dance between genres and actually succeeds in a pretty big way. There's a lot here to like if these genres appeal to you, and I think you'd be doing yourself a favor by trying it out if it seems up your alley. I'll put the usual link to the Steam store page down in the description of this video so that you can check it out if you choose to do so. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.